Somebody asked me as I walked into the sanctuary, where was I on holiday that I'm so brown? And I didn't dare to tell them that the deck on our house is facing south. And so whenever there is sun and comes out, I sit on the deck and of course write sermons and read books and do all sorts of exciting things. However, I have been to the sun over the weekend. I have just come back on Monday evening from Mykonos, from a very rugged, rocky, hilly and deserty island of Greece. And indeed, I sampled a little bit of sun on that island. But when I looked around that island, and I've noticed those huge rocks all around, I suddenly noticed that I know a little bit about Greek history, and that it was probably, or as they say, it was Zeus who had a huge fight with the giants, who then eventually were defeated, and they all turned to those rocks which you today see in Mykonos. However, I didn't come here to tell you about my adventure in Mykonos, but to share a thought with you about why I was glad to be there. Not only that it was my first flight out in a year and a half or so, but also that I went there to officiate at a wedding of a beautiful young couple with their families and with their friends. And looking around Mykonos and seeing those rocks and imagine the fight that may have taken place, and indeed looking at the young couple under a beautiful chuppah on the beach, I realized that we individuals, human beings, people and nations are so resilient, that when we go through difficult times, we also are prepared to look forward to good and pleasant times. And indeed, a wedding as such is really looking into the future, planning and believing in that future. So how do we relate today to Yom Kippur 2021? After one of the most difficult and strange years leading to this Jewish year, 5782. And a lot of you know that I very much enjoy playing with numbers, representing by the Hebrew alphabet. So this time I added up the numbers in 5782, plus the numbers in the secular year, and I arrived at the number 27. As you may know, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet also all are represented by a number, and thus potentially by a Hebrew word. I found that letters adding up to 27 can make up the word boche, which means to cry, which appears in Exodus chapter 2, verse 6. This is the verse in which baby Moses was found crying in the crib made of reed, and when found by Pharaoh's daughter. The same word also appears in number 11:10, which describes how the people wept or cried because they were lacking food and water, and when Moses must have been weeping inside and at the same time crying out to God, asking him why was he put in charge when he did not create the people, and even more so, with all his frailties, he did not ask to be a leader. Humanity, and in all countries of the world, have found themselves in crisis for a year and a half, and we still face questions with regards to what will happen to us in terms of health, work, travel, and general living. Not to mention the looming questions of climate change, major conflicts, and increasing poverty worldwide. There is an air of uncertainty not faced by humanity since perhaps the Second World War, but admittedly different from any wars we have either experienced, seen, or learned about. Different because this is an unseen and in many ways unknown army which we need to deal with and fight, both individually, also as a nation, and as part of world humanity. The pandemic and this invisible enemy has also brought about political uncertainty in a number of countries, of which results we saw in the handling of Afghanistan, Iran, and even some Western democracies are being questioned as to which way they are taking themselves and their people in the name of nationhood. Trust has been diminishing and antagonism increasing, as if everything through and forced lockdowns are to be questioned and doubted. Not unlike the behavior of the children of Israel following the release or escape from Egypt and wandering in the desert for some 40 years. The ups and downs, the rebellions, and crying out for food and water, never ever seemingly to be satisfied. Rebelling by the building the golden calf, as if that was to have redeemed them and brought happiness, joy, and satisfaction. During these complex and challenging times, it seems that extremism in many guises, whether political, cultural, economic, or religious, is also occurring. Social and political polarization is a new, or at least dramatically intensified force that is having a huge impact on political discourse, public policy, and electoral outcomes in many democracies. In recent times, there seems to be constant bickering and finding faults in so many areas, such as about wearing face coverings, COVID vaccination and flu jabs, about economy and politics, instead of sitting down and discussing things in an open and frank way without trying or doing or attaching blame. Surely no one really has an answer, as sadly there are no answers set in stone. We read that when Moses struck the rock because he had grown agitated with his people, who were demanding to have water instantly, he was punished for his impatience and ill-tempered behavior by being denied entry into the promised land, for which he fought so much with Pharaoh, his people, himself, and the enemies who tried to stop him from finding and reaching the promised land. The crying out and weeping is part of our common human traits. We cry and we laugh. And in paraphrasing the words in King Solomon's Ecclesiastes, we do use and we become the part and parcel of the time. There are times when we cry, but there are times when we also laugh. The pandemic has not only forced us into developing a new technology, and also for many of us to using modern technology. It has also highlighted that we can work together, even under difficult and in different circumstances. However, it has also brought to the surface extremist views. Extremist religious and political groups have been regrouping, as if on command, taking advantage of the perception that nations are weaker. Mistaken ideologies are thriving and taking hold of our inner weaknesses, hoping to dominate. When religions instill fear, where governments command instead of consult and listen, that is the time and place for humanity to sit up and pay closer attention. Fear makes us all weaker and less able to overcome, depleting our defenses. It is not unlike our immune system. A strong one withstands infections that come knocking at our door, or allows the infection to rid us of unwanted toxins and thereby strengthening us anew. In the Ethics of Our Fathers, Hillel said, "If I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I am not for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" The words that stand up for me in this saying is that Hillel asked not, "Who am I?" but "What am I?" He understood that it is important to define ourselves not just as individuals, but as people. And of course, this does not only apply just to the Jewish people, but to all humanity. As long as we know what we are and from whence we come, we will know what path to take and the people we need to be. To me, that means openness, humaneness, kindness, understanding, and never, ever to be a doctrinaire. No one, no religious leader, no rabbi, no priest, no imam, no politician has all the answers. When we work together, we can have those. Indeed, the beauty of Judaism is that it encourages us all to ask questions, to enter into pilpul, a kind of hand-to-hand combat, not fearing collision at the same time, avoiding the big bumps. It is teaching us, as we read the history and the discussions of our rabbis, about the eternal battle called Milchamta Shel Torah, the war of the Torah, a war in which one does not seek victory, but is ready to battle for the truth, justice, compassion, and understanding. Joy from winning battles through openness and kindness, accepting the difficulties and knowing that we can overcome. And this means to push extreme views and fears to the back of the classroom, bringing that eternal beauty of Judaism, hope, tikva, to the forefront. I asked at the onset of my address, how do we relate to this year's Yom Kippur? As I have said, I have no good, foolproof, or definitive answers. But my own attempt to answer the question is that as we face God's judgment, we can also deal with many things by asking for forgiveness for our mistakes, omissions, and actions. We can face these with humility and strength, with crying tears of joy as opposed to tears of pain, learning from the experience for the good of ourselves and making without fear, whether now, here, or beyond. Building a future and not a golden calf, facing the present time and the future with courage and not with fear, just like the couple that got married in Mykonos, and many other couples that are getting married and got married in the last year and are planning their weddings for next year. Indeed, it is important to instill that hope, that love, that care to our children and to our grandchildren. We read in the Ethics of Fathers, Akavia, the son of Machalel, would say, reflect upon three things, and you will not come to the hands of transgression. Know from where you came, where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give a judgment and accounting. We can give accounting. We can be judged as long as we stand firm and with hope, with tikva. Amen.